So a year ago, Moussa Diop took over the Lusk forecast from me, and he is better at it than I was. So we're very lucky to have him. Moussa is an associate professor of real estate here at the University of Southern California, or maybe I can't tell which way is south, but down there to the south at the University of Southern California. Before he was an academic, he had a successful career in banking. We were able to steal him away from the University of Wisconsin 5 or 6 years ago, and he's just been a great addition to our group. Also here, a co-author of the report, Una Jun. Una, where are you? Is Una here? Ah, there you are. And so with that, let me not keep you in suspense any longer and turn it over to Moussa Diop to tell us what's going on.
It's a pleasure to stand here to present our findings to you guys. And again, as Richard said, this is really on behalf of the entire team, Richard, Unha, and myself. So, as I was thinking about how to open basically my speech, I was thinking, it really must be, 12 months ago, probably you had a very different feeling about the economy, about real estate in general. But, today, probably you have a much different opinion about where things are going. And I think we have the right to be a little bit more optimistic and looking forward to the next couple of years. So what I want to start doing first is just talk about the economy, okay? Because the US economy, you forget my language, has really been kicking ass. So don't take this from me, this is from The Economist. The US is really the envy of the rest of the world, okay? You look at GDP, the US 30 years ago was about 40% of the G7 GDPs. You're talking about these 7 countries. Now, the US does represent about 50% of the GDP. So the US is basically, you combine all the other 6 countries, the US economy is basically as big as those countries combined. That's amazing, okay? And GDP growth over since 2020 has been 3 times faster in the US than in those countries combined. We have to be very proud of the economy, okay? But of course, we do face some challenges. And one of the biggest challenges probably is the budget deficit and how we're going to deal with it going forward, okay? We need just to be honest and recognize that this may require maybe very deep spending cuts or some tax increases, but it's for the administration to decide really how to deal with that. We are also very bitterly divided politics, okay? We are not sure yet how this is going to affect our stewardship of the economy. Hopefully, that will not affect it. So the Fed has done an amazing job managing inflation. And a lot of people have been skeptical about the Fed being able to pull that, and the Fed was able to pull that. All indicators are really trending in the right direction. As a result, we are kind of getting closer to the end of the monetary tightening period we have been in. Core inflation is trending towards the 2% target of the Fed, even though it will take a little bit longer to get there. But at 2.4%, it's amazing what the Fed has accomplished so far. The remaining inflation, though, to get it to 2% will be very difficult to get rid of, okay? Because that remaining inflation, it's mainly due to housing cost. And unfortunately, monetary policies have limited effect on housing cost, okay? This may require more time to deal with, okay? So I just showed some stats there. Food inflation was about 2.3%. This was in September, but rent inflation was about 5%. And this is where the problem is. This will take time. That's why the Fed cannot afford to wait for that 2% before deciding to reduce interest rate. Now, with inflation basically being under control, what the Fed has decided to do is to focus on its second mandate, is to make sure that we maintain full employment. Because over the last since March, to be honest, job creation has been a little bit slow. And the last stat we got, the last report, we did create about 12,000 jobs. That was not enough. And a lot of people are now very concerned about the country slowly finding itself, falling into recession. But unemployment is still very low. We are talking about close to 4.1%, which is amazing, given the monetary tightening we have been through over the last few months. Okay? The Fed has already sent a very strong message by cutting interest rate by 50 basis points. This was a little bit surprising. And we expect, and we were talking, Richard and I were talking about this, just right now, that the Fed probably will go for another rate cut in the next day or so of 25 basis points. And the expectation is that we will get maybe another 25 basis point cut in December. So we are really talking about already in 2024 expecting 100 basis points cut. That's amazing. That's good for commercial real estate. But we'll see, okay? The question I'm sure a lot of you guys have in mind is what's going to happen to real estate, right? How long is it going to take before interest rate come down and how far interest rate will come down, okay? Nobody really knows, but right now, 10-year Treasury yields are about at, I think, 4.4%. Maybe not taking into consideration these rate cuts I just talked about that are coming. Maybe the Fed will lower interest rate, pushing mortgage rate to maybe, the Treasury yield to maybe 2.5 to 3%. I think it would be unrealistic to expect very low interest rate that we have been used to in the past. That just won't happen. I think we need to recognize that that area is over and recognize that, interest rate will be maybe around 2% for some time. And this will take time, okay? The Fed did increase interest rate very fast in 2022 to deal with inflation. The Fed will be more cautious reducing interest rate. So we are getting 100 basis point cut this year. Maybe next year, budget maybe another 100 basis point cut. Maybe 125, not more than that. The Fed will be very cautious, okay? So now let's turn to California. I just said that the US economy is doing great, the envy of the rest of the world. I don't think we can say that about the housing market in California, okay? It's definitely not the envy of the rest of the world. Of course, this is my personal opinion. You may disagree. But the fact of the matter is California does represent about 11.6% of the US population, and we only have about 10% of the housing stock. This is where the problem started, okay? And this has taken a long, long time to build up. We looked at the 2024 numbers, and we find out that, this is based on permits that have been issued. California has only issued about, the number of permits issued represent about 0.7% of the stock in California. This is compared to the rest of nationally, it's about 1%. This just shows how serious the problem is in California of increasing supply, okay? So you compare California to other states, for instance, Texas, compared to Florida and Arizona, they are adding close to 2% supply. We are at less than 1%. And we have been at 1 or less than 1% for the last 10 years. Over the last 10 years, California has only added about, I'm not talking about California, I'm talking here about Los Angeles County has only added about 100,000 units. That's not significant, that's not enough, okay? So in order for us to really deal with the housing affordability problem, the first thing we'll need to do is take the problem seriously and understand that the only way to solve this problem is to add more supply, okay? And that's what we need to do. Another thing that's kind of resultant of high housing cost is migration. Migration has improved, but we are still, just look at the graph below here, this is people migrating out of California to other states, okay? So it has improved a lot, but now we are sitting at close to 250,000 people left California last year. That's still quite a lot. That's about 0.7% of the population. It's improving, and most of it is really Los Angeles. Most of it is really Los Angeles, but it's improving. But we need to deal with our housing problem in order to solve this. And this will take time, but California has to focus on that, okay? Housing costs, as I said, are the determining factor here. That's really what's causing the migration. Now let's move to our forecast. What do we see? Okay, let's first start with Los Angeles County. Los Angeles County, as I said earlier, doesn't really build a lot, and that's one of the challenges, right? So we saw that in 2024, deliveries have been about 20% lower than in 2023. That's a problem, okay? We need to really address that, and we expect that will be the case for the next 24 months, and we haven't even really factored in yet the effect of high interest rate. So we will not see more supply coming into Los Angeles County. And vacancy we expect to dip to close to 4% in California in the next couple of years. That will make housing a little bit less affordable. But this is one of the peculiarities of Los Angeles because of the regulatory environment. Rent will rise, but moderately. Initially, it will even slow to close to about less than 1%, but then it will go up to about 2%, okay? And these are the numbers, okay? So this is the rent increase, average rent increase in 2024, okay? California did have higher rent increase than the US on average, but this was mainly due to the fact that Sunbelt state did experience a lot of supply increase, and as a result, rent growth was really negative in those states. That did bring down the average rent increase nationally. So resulting basically in California having higher rent increase than the rest of the US. But that will revert. In 2024-5, we expect rent growth to be lower and then to be still much lower than the national average. But this is just, again, characteristics of California, okay? The submarkets where we see rent growing faster are going to be Koreatown, Pasadena, and surprisingly, Palmdale, Lancaster, a little bit up north, okay? We see rent going up there. More affordable areas, Inglewood, South LA, San Gabriel, and interestingly, Burbank, rent will almost stay very stable. It's between minus 0.5% to plus 0.5%. Not much rent increase or decrease at all. Just to summarize our view about Los Angeles County, Los Angeles County needs really to increase supply. And that's the only way we'll solve the housing problem. Out-migration is still a problem. Okay, but I think if we really make an effort to increase supply, that will address the out-migration that we're seeing. But the thing other submarkets need to do is really to emulate. It's amazing what Koreatown and Studio City have been doing in terms of really increasing supply. They need to be emulated by other submarkets, okay? We also, and I've been thinking about this for a while, we also need to strive to make downtown Los Angeles a more attractive residential location, okay? I think policymakers have to make this one of their top priorities because we just have so much, space in downtown Los Angeles that's not being fully used, okay? Now let me move to Orange County. Orange County, as you all know, is one of the most expensive market in Southern California. But one of the peculiarities of Orange County also is that Orange County doesn't really build much. It doesn't really build much. Just look at, as a proof, just look at vacancy in Orange County. Going back, and you can go back as far as you want, vacancy always hovers around 4%. That's low, okay? And we predict that vacancy will remain that way over the next couple of years, okay? So rent that are already very expensive, very high in Orange County, will even get higher. But rent increase in Orange County this next couple of years will be more moderate than in the past, but this is mainly due to the fact that rent are already very high. There is not enough room for rent to keep increasing in Orange County. This is, if you look at Orange County, this is the average rent. And of course, coastal cities in Orange County, average rent is much, much higher than this, okay? So Orange County rent is about, 50% higher than the US average, and Orange County has always been growing higher than the US average, but as I said earlier, this growth will be a little bit more moderate in the next couple of years, okay? Where do we see rent growing faster in Orange County? It's gonna be in Anaheim, Santa Ana, and North County, not coastal cities or Irvine. Rent will still grow there at a decent rate, around 2%, but you won't be seeing the 4 or 5% that people have been used to in that market. Okay? The main problem of Orange County is that really it's not adding supply. You may wonder why add supply if vacancy is already very high and rent is not growing fast, okay? But the problem is that because Orange County is not adding enough supply, unlike other markets, Orange County keeps to basically lose people to other counties, okay? And this is a problem that Orange County will have to deal with, okay? So Santa Ana and Anaheim are definitely the more attractive location these days because it's much easier to add supply there. And you see a lot of renters now moving to that area, even people who are quite well off are moving to that area because it's a lot more affordable, compared, of course, to the rest of Orange County, okay? So this is what I was just talking about earlier, the fact that Orange County is the only county we have seen experiencing worsening out-migration, okay? The level of migration out of Orange County in 2022 was twice as much as the level in 2021 at the height of COVID. Okay. This only reflects the fact, shows how serious the housing crisis is in Orange County, okay? The Inland Empire. There's a lot of good things to say really about the Inland Empire. The economy has been growing very fast, but also the Inland Empire has been very responsive to the increased demand. And the increased demand is not only from jobs created in that area, but as well as people migrating to the Inland County from other counties, mainly Los Angeles County and Orange County, okay? But the market has been quite responsive. Even though we expect for the next couple of years, because vacancy is already so high, you look at vacancy, it's above 6%, okay? We predict that vacancy will start to slow down as demand basically, as absorption rate go up. But we don't expect a lot of increase in supply in the next couple of years in Inland County because there's just a lot of availability these days and vacancy is already very high, okay? So rent will increase, but rent, as you will see, it's already much cheaper than in Orange County and much cheaper than in some submarkets in Los Angeles. The Inland Empire, even though supply is very high and vacancy is right now higher than the average in Southern California, is expected to really generate much higher rent growth than the other submarkets, just because of the level of demand that's taking place there. Rent, this is what I was talking about. Rent is going to increase in the Inland Empire anywhere from about 4% on average for the next couple of years, okay? So the areas that will benefit a lot from this rent growth are going to be those areas closer to Los Angeles County and closer to Orange County, basically benefiting from the out-migration to the Inland Empire. That's West Riverside, Chino, Rancho Concomand, and then the Redland Fontana. Outlying San Bernardino and Palm Springs, that's really a dormant market. Okay, rent increase in that area will not be much at all. Just to summarize this Inland Empire, our comment about the Inland Empire, the economy will definitely continue to grow in the Inland Empire. That will be a positive for commercial real estate because the Inland Empire will definitely benefit from more deglobalization and onshoring. Okay, but rent is becoming more expensive, and I just told you that rent is going to increase by about 4% over the next couple of years in the Inland Empire. What it does, it's really making the Inland Empire more expensive, okay? I told you earlier that migration from Los Angeles County has been decreasing, and that migration has mainly been to the Inland Empire. We expect that to continue as the Inland Empire becomes more expensive, okay? So right now, the rent premium, not the rent discount moving to the Inland Empire, is about 10%. That may shrink over time. Maybe in the next 5 years or so, the Inland Empire may lose its, affordability competitive advantage. Okay? So it's critical then for the Inland Empire, for you guys who are doing business there, to just make sure that supply is kept, doesn't really slow down. That will be very important. Okay? Moving on to San Diego County. San Diego County, unlike Orange County, is a lot more supply, supply more units, really increase supply faster than as demand really increases. Supply in Orange County, in San Diego County, has been a lot larger than in Orange County. Okay, so as you can tell here, the supply increase in Orange County has been very high, and as a result, vacancy is a little bit higher, very similar to the vacancy we see now in the Inland Empire, just because of the fact that a lot of supply did come on stream. So supply will slow down, vacancy will slow down, but rent increase will be quite healthy in San Diego County. Okay, rent will increase by about a little bit than in the Inland Empire, but will still be quite healthy, anywhere between 2 to 4%. So this is the Inland Empire. As you see, next year, rent will, this year, the San Diego County rent didn't really increase much, okay? About 1%, about at the national average, okay? But starting next year, we see rent really starting to grow in the in San Diego County, because a lot of this vacancy will start dropping as demand increases. I like to really compare San Diego County to Orange County because they are very similar, but their approach to really responding to demand is very different. The San Diego County is a lot more supply responsive than Orange County is. Okay, so. As a result, unlike Orange County, we don't see this flight out of the San Diego County. Over the last few years, net migration out of San Diego County has been negative, meaning that more people have been moving into San Diego County than really leaving, okay? Which is a positive for San Diego County, because San Diego County is definitely more affordable than Orange County, okay? And supply is definitely coming in a lot faster. So finally, the last one we cover is Ventura County. I don't know. How many of you guys are from Ventura County or do business in Ventura County? Wow, okay. I would like to talk to you because I have been trying to find people who know a little bit about that market so that they can help me understand better what's happening in that market, because not much seems to be happening in Ventura County. I mean, supply is very sporadic, and supply is very localized. So where supply comes in Ventura County, it's mainly in Ventura, in Oxnard, and Port, you name it, that's really where we see supply. And when I'm talking about supply here, I don't want to mislead you. You are just talking about a couple of maybe a few hundred units coming and basically shifting the market, because that market is just so tiny, okay? I was even telling Richard yesterday, but why do we really cover Ventura County? Because not much seems to be happening. We always tell the same story every year, okay? So, but I'm sure there are exciting things happening there. I would like to talk to you so that you guys can educate me. Okay? It's a very expensive market, which may surprise a lot of people. That's the second most expensive market after Orange County, okay? As you can see, look at vacancy. Vacancy has remained about 4% in Ventura County, and it's not going to budge much. It's going to stay at that level, okay? Rent, as I said, the second most expensive market. And rent increase will be quite high, almost as high as in the Inland Empire. That's what we see in Ventura County. I mean, If you can find a way to do development in Ventura County, definitely go there. It's just amazing how limited supply is in Ventura County, okay? This, of course, makes our job a little bit difficult because we just don't have the data we need to be able to really do a very good forecast when we are talking about really Ventura County, okay? At the submarket level, it's even more challenging for us, okay? And by the way, I'm just summarizing our forecast for the markets, but we also do it at the submarket level. We cover about 31 submarkets. Please go to the report, and if you have any questions, feel free to talk to us. So going back to Ventura County, as you see, rent beat the national, rent increases was much higher than the national average last year. It's going to remain very high. Okay, in some submarkets in Ventura, in the city of Ventura and in Oxnard and that area, rent will be even higher, okay? But in the areas, this was a little bit surprising to me when I was looking, kind of trying to understand the data a little bit. In the Simi Valley and the, Camarillo area, which is a little bit closer to the San Fernando Valley, you don't see much rent increase there, and which was, I still wonder what's going on. Maybe I need to talk to you so that you can tell me what's going on there. That was a bit surprising to me. So just to summarize, we just feel maybe I'm wrong here, but that's maybe my personal view. I just find Ventura County to be a little bit disconnected from the rest of Southern California. And it has not attracted a lot of migration. You don't see a lot of really migration out of Ventura County to the other counties. You don't see a lot of people moving in. And it seems like it's second most expensive market. It's going to remain very expensive. But there is no indication there is a desire really to change things in that market. We just don't see much activity in Ventura County. So just to conclude, I think we need to understand and to be honest with ourselves that our affordable housing crisis is going to be here for a while, okay? And not just in Southern California or in California, but throughout the country, okay? And this will not be solved overnight. It will take years, if not to say decade, okay? So it's critical, though, for Southern California, especially Los Angeles County, to find ways to really increase supply. And that should be really our main focus. Let's really do as much as we can to increase supply. In the short term, though, we can try to come up with fixes to make it more affordable, more bearable for some groups, okay? But at the end of the day, the only solution is really to increase supply. And we are just not going to solve this problem by increasing supply by less than 1% annually. And this is what we have seen over the last few years, okay? So, unfortunately, people talk a lot about interest rate getting lower. I just mentioned it. That would be good for you guys because mortgage rates will be lower. It will make a lot of projects pencil for sure. But for renters and as well as for people looking to buy, unfortunately, in the short term, it may make life even more difficult, okay? Because it will take time for supply to respond. Out-migration out of California is decreasing, but it's still very high. And the only way really to deal with this problem, I think, as I mentioned earlier, housing affordability is really a big factor in this. And as we deal with that, it will probably solve the problem, okay? So this is all I have for you. So I look forward to your comments. Please read the report. And if you have any suggestion, any comments, please share it with us. Thank you very much for your attention.